So I consulted a former teacher of mine from the Academy of the New Church who recommended that I ask our speaker to give today's address. His commendation was, he is a thoughtful patriot. After he agreed to speak, I asked this thoughtful patriot to share with me some of his ancestral connections with our community. He wrote back, related to all Holmeses, Actons, and Oedners in Bernathen. I said, well, that sounded like a good resume to me. So Dean Holmes graduated from the Academy of the New Church Boys School in 1971. He graduated from the University of Illinois, Chicago, with a major in art history and received a master's degree from the University of Virginia in landscape architecture. Dean has served in the U.S. Navy in both active and reserve forces. He has worked in the landscape architecture field, the arts, auction, and appraisal research, and as a teacher at the Academy of the New Church in the arts and other subjects. He is especially fond of having created and taught the Senior Portfolio Program along with his wife, Nita Youngie Holmes. More recently, he has created an ongoing design and construction nursery business in Costa Rica. Dean has been married to Nita for 50 years as of this past June 20th. May we have a round of applause for their recent golden anniversary. Dean and Nita have 4 children, all married, and 8 grandchildren. Please welcome today's keynote speaker, Dean Holmes.
Well, good morning, fellow citizens and guests. I'm going to give you some reflections on narrative history. 92 years ago, in 1932, a 9-year-old boy was told by his parents that they and several other families living in the Glenview Society were going to move to the faraway, exotic land of Florida and start a community called the New Atlantis. The boy was my father, Kenneth Holmes. Kenneth was aware of problems. The Great Depression lay on the country like a plague, and many people, including his family, had lost jobs, businesses, and homes. They had lost everything except imagination, faith, and a real belief that they could find a way to create a better life. He'd heard adults talk of moving, of a new beginning, of buying land and forming a community based on mutuality and usefulness, where folks would help each other. There was much he did not understand, but he knew his life was about to change dramatically, and he looked forward to the adventure. On September 25th, 1932, Kenneth and his father joined a caravan of old cars that circled Park Drive, said their goodbyes, and started down to Florida. A week later, they reached the New Atlantis and began building cabins and planting crops. The new beginning had begun. Yet despite their best efforts, the New Atlantis colony did not flourish as they'd hoped. The land was poor for farming, and the economy remained difficult. Within 5 years, all had moved back to the Glenview Society to make do as they could. The effort was noble, but disappointing. However, for an inquisitive and active 9-year-old boy, the Florida Panhandle was heaven. He explored the pristine and isolated beaches, swamps, and forests. He played with country kids and discovered alligators, snakes, and wild boar. So many of his future characteristics were formed or nurtured in Florida. He developed a sort of in-your-face courage that served him well throughout his life. For example, during World War II, he was an artillery spotter and was often behind enemy lines. He received a medal for heroism in risking his life to save 3 severely wounded members of his squad. Well, his first day in school, in the one-room schoolhouse, proved a test of his pluck. His father delivered him to the little school that was 8 miles distant from their cabin. The teacher was an austere and ferret-faced man called Mr. Roberts. He met Kenneth at the door and hurried him inside with a brief introduction. Kenneth was keenly aware of the aggressive stares and vicious smirks among the students that foretold of extreme danger. He slipped out the door at an opportune moment and headed down the road toward home. He ran into his father, Berger, who was driving by in his truck. Berger understood that his son would have to deal with the boys and took Kenneth back to school. Recess came, and Kenneth went outside to face his challenge. His opponent was an older boy with the inauspicious name of Burly Forehand. Kenneth proved he was good with his fists by beating Burly soundly, and the leader of the gang, named Doc Barron, deemed Kenneth worthy and accepted him into the group. He and Doc became good friends. Kenneth loved learning from the old men in the area and very much admired the new teacher who replaced Mr. Roberts after Doc Barron had literally thrown him out of the schoolhouse. Kenneth said in his later years that this one-room school was the best education he ever had. He learned to love history and developed a strong sense of justice demonstrated in a number of his stories. And he found his calling here. He became an American history teacher and taught at Glenbrook North High School his entire career. The New Atlantis pioneers included the ancestors of many people here today: Lees, McQueens, Fullers, Coles, Days, Holmes. Many of us grew up hearing family stories about life in the New Atlantis. Wallace Stegner wrote that there are 2 ways of learning history. One is analytic objective history, and the other is narrative history. The stories of the New Atlantis are narrative history. In the telling, they captured the imaginations of those who heard the stories. The stories turned the facts of history into something 3-dimensional, approachable, something children could relate to and feel. Narrative history adds an emotional component that is often missing when presented with facts alone. Every family has stories. Write down and retell your own family history before the stories and the people are gone and forgotten, for they are a part of you. Even if you are not aware of it, your past history has helped to form you. As William Faulkner said, the past is never dead, it's not even past. Family stories and family history form deep culture. This is also true of communities and countries. Our stories define us, set goals before us, give us our sense of place and purpose. Karl Marx was not wrong in saying, if you can cut people off from their history, they are easily persuaded. It is through the past that we understand ourselves. and each other. The past is a guide to the future. By knowing the past, we can understand and change what hasn't worked and keep what has worked. C.S. Lewis said that humans have two primary organs of thought, and both are necessary. The imagination generates ideas and new creations, yet above the imagination sits the organ of discernment. Discernment determines if the creations of the imagination are good or not, useful or not. The organ of discernment relies heavily upon history. Narrative history, stories, are captivating and powerful ways to pass on culture. And the stories may be told across so many media: voice, film, theater, book, art, song. The United States of America is a dynamic place of so many stories. Stories tell us who we are as a culture and as a nation. And just as there are millions of families here, so there are millions of stories that together form the story of our country. We should learn our country's stories and celebrate the incredible variety which our freedom has brought us, while promoting the aims of the Declaration of Independence itself: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The 4th of July should be celebrated, as John Adams said, with pomp and parade, for this day commemorates the signing of the Declaration of Independence and the birth of our astounding experiment in freedom that has attracted so many millions to join us in this land of the free and home of the brave. Let our understanding of the past continue to help shape an even better future for our nation. Happy 4th of July. Thank you.